You only have to watch political ads for a couple of more weeks, and as candidates make their closing arguments, there's one line that you'll likely keep hearing. Here's Josh Croup with Why It Matters.
Stop me if you've heard this one before.
100% every time.
They agree 100% of the time.
That is a lot of the time, and it's not inaccurate. It just doesn't tell us the whole story. Let's dive in. It is right to say that Tim Ryan and Marcy Kaptur have voted in line with President Biden's positions 100% of the time during his first 2 years in office. But so have 156 other members of the House. 215 House Democrats have been on his side at least 98% of the time. Let's look at the first 2 years of the Trump presidency. Ryan and Kaptur voted with Trump more than 23% of the time. Nancy Pelosi sided with him 20% of the time. Did Nancy Pelosi agree with a fifth of Trump's agenda? Did Kaptur and Ryan support nearly a quarter of all of his ideas? Of course not. But again, these are just votes. A party's leadership won't put the big things up for a vote unless they know they're going to pass, unless they know they have the votes, and they have to be in sync. But a lot of times, votes are on little things that don't get the headlines, especially in the Senate. A lot of the votes there are on cabinet and judicial nominees. Senate Minority Leader Mitch McConnell has voted with President Biden 55% of the time. Ohio's Rob Portman, nearly 62%. Are those guys on board with more than half of the president's agenda? No. But this.
He voted 100% for Biden and Pelosi's liberal plans.
It's a cheap, easy point, and it sticks with people, especially when the president's approval rating isn't hot. It's smart to be skeptical of any political ad. It's also smart to do your own research, to form your own opinion before you cast your ballot. And that's why it matters. Josh Croup, 13 ABC, Action News.
Intel and Ohio's elected officials promised the impacts of the new facility in Licking County will be felt across the state. They're betting billions of dollars that this investment pays off. 13 ABC's Josh Croup explains why it matters.
A rare bipartisan celebration. A big company building a big plant in central Ohio. Big deal, right? Well, it's a big deal for Ohio if Intel carries out its end of the deal. And Intel is getting a big tax deal. The state is giving Intel nearly $2 billion in cash incentives to build this $20 billion plant here. Many are performance-based, and they're separate from the tax credits and financial assistance promised through the CHIPS Act, passed in Congress, signed by the president. Now, the U.S. and Ohio are betting billions on one company. This isn't going to help with the chip shortage we've seen, at least in the short term. It should in the long term, and it will be a signal that these semiconductor manufacturing facilities can function here in the U.S. These chips are in high demand. They're used in everything, from computers and smartphones to cars and appliances. Today, 70% are produced in Asia. So how does this help us here? State officials say, for one, it'll have ripple effects across the state, say in Toledo's auto industry, which again, cars rely on these chips. It'll be a big step toward not relying on foreign countries for these things. Ideally, we'll rely on Ohioans building things in Ohio. To build the plant, it'll take an estimated 7,000 construction workers, about 3 years. Intel also is pledging $50 million over the next decade to universities and community colleges across Ohio. It wants to partner with the state's college students on research projects and build programs that create a pipeline of talent from our institutions to this facility. Now, we're just beginning the journey with this company, and your elected officials admit it's a big gamble. This will require oversight, but if Intel follows through, it does promise big opportunities for New Albany, Ohio, the state of Ohio, and the country. And that's why it matters. Josh Croup, 13 ABC Action News.
Earlier this week, Ohio's U.S. Senate candidates agreed to debate each other.
That's not the case for candidates in other important races, including for governor and Congress in Northwest Ohio. 13 ABC's Josh Croup explains why it matters.
To debate or not to debate? That is the question that candidates are debating this political season in Ohio. This week, U.S. Senate candidates J.D. Vance and Tim Ryan finally agreed to 2 televised debates after weeks of going back and forth, trying to settle on a time, date, and place. Neither are incumbents. The race is close.
They absolutely want that venue because they're trying to look one of them to pull ahead. They think the debate is the way to do that.
But a pair of incumbents, Congresswoman Marcy Kaptur and Governor Mike DeWine, haven't committed to sharing the stage with their opponents. 13 ABC has been trying to arrange a debate between Kaptur and her opponent, J.R. Majewski, but Kaptur publicly says she has reservations about debating him because of his attendance at the January 6th rally.
He said the FBI cleared him of any criminal activity. I told him I want to see the letter from the FBI that says that.
DeWine says he's out and about constantly and has been pretty visible as governor.
So it's not like they don't know what I've done. It's not like they don't know what my positions are.
But this decision also comes down to strategy.
And it doesn't make sense to, when you're feeling really good about the race, to risk getting on a debate stage and making a gaffe.
DeWine also told us this.
If you look at those, they're not that highly watched.
But they are watched by people who genuinely are trying to make up their minds. And also to learn more about the person challenging the incumbent who might not have as much name recognition. Sure, some would just watch these for sport, to cheer on their team, unlikely to be swayed by what's actually said. But for the undecided voter, and heck, for all voters, debates are a chance to see these candidates together, unfiltered, unedited, outside of a political ad or a 12-second TV soundbite. And that's why it matters. Josh Krupp, 13 ABC Action News. Whether you like them or not, for a lot of you, the answer is not. Well, here they come. It's roundabout time. We talk about roundabouts. People get pretty passionate about these things. Not excluded from the crowd are engineers.
They make our roads safer and they make them flow better.
That's Lucas County engineer Mike Panuski. The county is in the process of installing its 4th roundabout of this year and 30th total. 13 more are planned over the next 5 years. You think that's a lot? Look next door in Indiana, where the city of Carmel, population 100,000, has more than 140 of them. It's set to be a one-stoplight town in the next few years. Since installing them, injury crashes down 80%, total crashes down 40%. We have seen similar numbers in other communities where roundabouts replace signaled intersections.
They save lives.
It's really like watching poetry in motion, or, traffic in motion, because roundabouts keep traffic moving.
Everybody hates sitting in traffic. And roundabouts basically make traffic flow better so that you don't have this kind of platoon of cars going between intersections so that people can get to where they want to go.
That continuous motion also helps reduce carbon emissions. Just remember to keep moving once you are in the roundabouts. So why do people hate them so much?
It's definitely a change in driving behavior and how we drive.
Sometimes change is good. Research shows that support for roundabouts in communities where they are new concepts are similar to Congress's approval ratings. But support consistently does go up when those same communities are resurveyed months and years after they're installed. Once people figure them out, they gain popularity. So maybe give them a chance. But again, whether you like it or not,
they're not going away.
And that's why it matters. Inflation, 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 a source of aggravation, higher prices at the store and gas station, the foundation for one party's fixation on making political gains across the nation. Translation, it's likely bad news for the president's party at the ballot box, even if the whole problem isn't his fault. But he says,
Republican wins, inflation is going to get worse. It's that simple.
Right now, Republicans across Ohio and the country are capitalizing on this week's Consumer Price Index report, the final reading before the midterms. It's our big monthly measure of how much people are paying for goods and services on average. And it was worse than expected. Prices rose 0.4% in September. They're up 8.2% over the last year. Prices keep going up, and it is a global problem. But how do we fix this here? Well, the Federal Reserve keeps aggressively raising interest rates, but it can only really control demand. And guess what? People are still spending money. Supply and demand still aren't in balance. That means more aggressive rate hikes are coming this year and likely next. How about the impact of prices at the pump on voters? Well, people blame the president whenever they're increasing. He took credit when they were decreasing.
A politician would like you to think that they can wrangle and control gas prices, but they can't. President Biden is wrong to take credit. It's also wrong to blame President Biden solely for the increase.
Still, 54% of people said in a poll released this week that rising gas prices alone make them more likely to vote Republican in November. We'll have to see how much of an impact inflation really does have on Election Day, but it's clear it will be a motivation for some voters. And that's why it matters. Josh Krupp, 13 ABC Action News.
Well, for more than 2 months, Toledo City Council members have debated a proposal to cancel medical debt for residents by using American Rescue Plan dollars.
And this week they voted to approve a plan, but some key details still have to be worked out. Josh Krupp explaining why it matters.
Turning $800,000 into tens of millions of dollars of relief. The investment voted on by Toledo City Council this week aims to wipe out medical debt for thousands of residents.
I don't know what better way that would stimulate economic recovery than eliminating people's medical debt.
So how's this going to work? Well, City Council members say they plan to partner with the New York-based nonprofit group RIP Medical Debt. It buys that debt in bulk at a fraction of the cost. The group claims it has relieved some $7 billion of debt for Americans since its inception. But there's a lot we still don't know about how this is going to work, as our Sean Haggerty laid out for us this week.
Which hospitals will sign off? Which systems? Which part of town will those hospitals be on? What people will that affect? All of that remains up in the air.
It's up in the air. Who gets their debt forgiven? What kind of debt gets forgiven? The initial proposal, spearheaded by Councilwoman Michelle Grimm, was to spend $1.4 million to wipe out some $200 million in debt. The dollar amount ended up coming down after Lucas County Commissioners pledged to chip in $800,000 for their own program. They could vote on that next week, but there's still a lot we don't know about that plan either. Still, as the Blade editorial board points out, this program has the chance to be a model for other cities. Toledo could be a real leader here if this pans out. The question is, how will it pan out? How will it be executed? These are important questions with a sizable investment that could have a significant impact, and that's why it matters. Josh Krupp, 13 ABC Action News.